Hi, good evening to everyone who is watching. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Philip McMillan, and today I'm asking for support because I'm trying to build some momentum about finding solutions and building tools that are accessible to the public. That's one of the things that I've found that are really sad about what has happened in the pandemic. People have been given limited options. There is very little that they can do other than effectively taking the only option that was put in front of them. When it comes to clinical medicine, we always look for toolboxes. Very rarely do we have a situation where we only have one tool or one string in our bow. That's not clinical medicine. And what I'll be showing you is what happens, say, for instance, with heart failure. I'll come back to this in a minute and demonstrate why I think this is important to building a toolbox as well for COVID. One of the first pieces of it, I think, is nitric oxide because it is so accessible. And so, what I'm asking people to do is to join us on this journey. So this is about Kickstarter. We've been putting this together for some time. Humming heroes inside the nose that almost nobody knows, and it's a storybook format to try and capture this idea about how to use humming to overcome not just the virus but the inflammation that can occur in the sinuses in the upper airway. Really important scientific point, but it requires people to join in this journey. And so the only link in the description is to that Kickstarter program. We want as many people to join. And even if you don't want to support it financially, just by joining, you would be able to get the free booklet and probably the links to the recent course that won't be free, but nitric oxide and COVID, potential strategies for improved outcomes. So, this is all about integrating the science and critically allowing everyone to have solutions. There's nothing more scary than not knowing what you can do, not having any tools that are accessible to you. And this is what I think I'm hoping to be able to do, give the public a way forward. Because the next few months, even into a few years, are going to be very frightening. The more control you have over what happens to you and your family is really, really valuable. One of the things that I came across that I probably should have highlighted in my presentation was the link to the oral microbiome. I'm going to make a specific um, um, module on the course just about this. And my hope is that as we link these things together, we'll understand a bit more about not just how humming helps, but how the human microbiome in the mouth and in the upper airways can be of great value. One of the things that the paper highlighted, and I'll show you this image, is just how important that microbiome is in the context of that nitric oxide production. Here is what we have been talking about, the normal production of nitric oxide, where the body will effectively produce nitric oxide from the amino acid, here using the enzyme, and nitric oxide here is produced. But what they're highlighting is as people get older, this pathway gets less and less effective. And then the body gets very dependent on this nitrate, nitrite, nitric oxide cycle, which is produced from the diet, and then the diet breaking it down into nitrites, which are then concentrated in the saliva, and then specific bacteria act on the nitrites to produce nitric oxide. This then becomes a really critical pathway. And one of the reasons why this is so important in the context of COVID is because many of the bacteria that would normally do that have been damaged and destroyed by the virus. This is why I explain to people about understanding how this virus is able to do so much damage is critical. And that's why the origins of COVID 19 was such an important question. People think it's just about attaching blame. No, this is about trying to understand how this thing was designed in such a way to create so much damage. We need to understand it clinically. So here is what I am looking to build. This is my COVID immune toolbox. And this is what it would look like. At the moment, I've got nitric oxide in there. And over time, using this same technique, I'm going to be building out at least hopefully 5 pieces to this toolbox. And the point about the toolbox is that everyone will have access to it. It's not going to be able to be controlled in such a way that people can then be shoehorned into doing only one particular action. That only benefits people who have financial gain. But for people who are looking for clinical solutions, the more options you have, the better. So here is a clinical context. This is heart failure. This is my heart failure toolbox. Some people would add a few more, but I think that this will hopefully get the idea across. At the center of the toolbox are the loop diuretics like furosemide or bumetanide. Critically, beta blockers to slow the heart are very important. ACE inhibitors if the blood pressure is up. Digoxin in some cases, which we use much less these days, but it's still a useful part of the toolbox because of the effect it has on the heart. And spironolactone. This is another diuretic that has longer term value on protecting the heart and also potassium levels. And so when you look at heart failure, you rarely have a situation where you do these in order. It just depends. Most patients will be on a loop diuretic, but if their blood pressure remains up, the next shot is the ACE inhibitor. Or what happens if their heart rate is too fast? You'd use a beta blocker. Depending on if their blood pressure is too low, you may need digoxin. If their potassium levels are too low, you may use spironolactone in terms of changing the doses. This is about toolbox, and that's clinical medicine. Very rarely do we end up in a situation where we have only one option in front of us. And this option has some risks. And this is the point that I think we have to grasp. If there are no further options, that is all that you've got. I don't think that's good clinical medicine. And I look for solutions. So, getting back to the point about what we're trying to do in the context of educating and helping people to get a better grasp of what it is that we're trying to do. So, here is just a few pictures to show you what's in that book. And this is using the story to try and help people to understand, even children, adults, what it is this is about. And so I'm just going to skip through some of these images here so that you can see beautiful images, lovely words, and tied to it will be the science showing how the lymphocytes, these are the lymphocytes, the immune cells, are fighting on protecting our airways against infection. And then this is the story as to what happens when these lymphocytes come up against COVID 19. And so it's using the imagery to get ideas. This is how the immune system would normally tackle viruses. That's what it's showing. And then this is the beauty of the upper airway using imagery. And then this is the origin of the beginnings of COVID 19. And you can see that image there. But all we're doing is taking this idea that without that power with nitric oxide, this is the damage that can occur, and how it is that one lymphocyte came up with a solution to be able to fight against this terrible situation that the body was up against in terms of ongoing infection. So, this is the point about this Kickstarter program. We're using imagery and stories to be able to educate people and give them tools that they can use to be able to not be so afraid and have solutions in the future. Look out again for the course that will be coming shortly. This will be attached as well to this Kickstarter program. And yes, your support and will be valuable, because if this works, we have more things coming in the line where we'll be trying to see if we can find ways of educating the public so that they can find solutions that are accessible to them and hopefully bring hope for the future. Have a great evening.